Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the tough issues. You know, that customer experience thing that's all of a sudden very important today. I'll let you in on a little secret. It's always been important, way ahead of whatever's in second best. And I am so fortunate to have a great network of connections and friends that I bring onto the show every week. And what these experts do, and yes, they are experts, is they share with the audience those things that they either have done or are doing now to make things better for you and your customers. So this week, I welcome John Ellis and Durran Cage. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
It's good to be here as well. Thank you so much.
I'm all charged up about this episode, pun intended.
Yeah.
I like
So
that.
before we jump into it, John and Durran, why don't you just give us like a brief history of your background in automotive or other, and what brought you to this point here, and then we'll jump right into it.
John,
Yeah,
I'll let you
certainly.
start it off first. Go ahead.
Thanks, Durran. Hey, yeah, Paul, and thanks for having me back. I really enjoyed our first show, and we know what an amazing audience you have. I'm excited to watch the questions come here in a little while and get a chance to interact with your team on this show tonight. We, Durran and I, we've been in this business for a long time. He and I met over 15 years ago in the business. Durran was running a dealership, and I was working for one of North America's largest vendors, supporting him in his dealership. Prior to that, I was in retail. I've also worked with Toyota in the OEM world for a while. And now I'm immersed in things like AI and battery and electric vehicles. So I've owned one for 9 years. We've talked about that last time we were on. I've got a second one in the family now, a Model 3. So I've got a lot of experience and history with these vehicles, but I'm also an economist and a researcher. So I'm reading and absorbing and learning from other people, as well as my own experiences, so I can get a grasp of what this industry is going to look like and how we can prepare our dealers and our intenders, our hopeful buyers, the right way. And hope your call is going to start another segment of that today. We're going to help educate the field and hopefully hear some things from your clients that and your listeners that we haven't heard yet, and maybe we can dig deeper into. So excited to be here.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Durran?
Yeah, Paul, and that was a great intro, John. And so what I would say is, I've been in the industry since 2002, just loved it, just since I sold my first car, 2002 Dodge Dakota, by the way. But since then, I graduated out of the University of New Mexico, and then I got an OEM job for Chrysler, which brought me out to Memphis, Tennessee. And I received a job working after the district manager, I received a job doing internet, and then that's where John and I connected. So that was probably like around that 2010 era, which is crazy to date ourselves back that far. But back then, John and I both had a passion around digital and internet. I'm talking about with fire. And then what's happening, and as I've evolved as a consultant and he's evolved as an expert in many fields in automotive, last year we started connecting about the power of what's to come in the future. And so as I'm advising my clients and he's advising his, it only made sense for us to start really digging in deeper to create a community and a partnership. And that's what kind of brought us here. So what I love about this is that every time that we get together and we connect, whether it's me and John just speaking or with our whole team, the automotive advisors or whichever, it's like I'm learning something new every time. And so that's what I'm looking forward to tonight with you, Paul, is as much as we're here to speak on it, but also to grow our knowledge with your community as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being on. I want to just jump to a couple of comments, and then I've got an opener to get the show started. First on the scene, Ed Chipolowski. Got a link to his website, for great resources on EVs. Thank you, Ed. Much appreciated, man. Let me put that on the screen here. So you guys can check into that. And it lives on forever. So if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it stays on my wall. So everybody will see it. Hopefully that won't happen. And our good friend, Larry Feldman. Good evening, gentlemen. Brian Cates. Good evening.
Larry.
What's up, Larry?
All the way from the West Coast, Michael Weldon. Let's go EV Awareness. And Marcello Arcele. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Hashtag Team Live. And my favorite retired tech, Ron Usher. Hello, everyone. EV airy one. I see what you did there. And I caught what you did too. You were immersed into it. Don't think that got by me. Got to get up earlier in the morning for that. And Marcello is from Hotlanta. All right, so I'm going to throw something really crazy out there. All right, and
let's do it.
Be ready for this. Who in their right mind, think about that, would buy a vehicle that only goes 200 to 250 miles, right? Depending on driving conditions and the weight of the vehicle's load, and almost no, and I mean almost no places where you can refuel. Who in his right mind would do that?
Boy, that's a good one.
Durran, would you care to guess?
Who in their right mind would drive something that does 2 to 250 miles? 200
to 250. And let me preface that with this. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So who would do that?
Everyone.
Starting with one famous guy. And guess what his name was?
Who's that?
John, do you care to throw a name out?
The one famous guy?
Yeah.
I would say it's Elon.
Or Henry.
In 1908, in 1908, the first Model T that was introduced went 200 to 250 miles. But unlike the multitude of charging stations that we have today and the gas stations that we have today, gas could be bought in hardware stores. Some of them maybe, because it wasn't that prevalent. But yet, if those pioneers didn't take that leap of faith, we'd still be riding horses. So with that, I open up the show.
Yeah, I love it. I'll give you another analogy that fits right in, right? To think about that same scenario where electric vehicles were prevalent back then as well. But what killed the electric vehicle? Anybody know?
The battery capability?
The push start of the combustion engine.
Yes.
When we didn't have to crank it anymore, the ladies could drive the engines. Of course, and then we had mass adoption through, our assembly line. So things got a lot more efficient and more cost effective, certainly. The infrastructure followed. Cart before the horse, right?
Yeah.
We're doing that again. But I can tell you, there's one company who did not put the cart before the horse. They put the horse before the cart. Can we guess who that is?
Tesla?
Yes. And we could show you the map, but you don't need it if you own one. And if you don't own one, I've written many articles about it. They're everywhere. In rural South Mississippi, North Mississippi, pick me a spot. Now you can go to central U.S. and probably not find one in the plains and the deserts, right? But still, in where people are living and driving, they're everywhere. And he made sure that the experience was more important than the vehicle. And that's the key to success in electric vehicles. It's not the vehicle. And I'll tell you, here was the analogy I was going to make. I think is critically important. Nissan Leaf came out with an electric vehicle that had some promise, but no mileage. It wasn't pretty. It didn't have an infrastructure. The marketing was horrible. And so eventually it just died down and became just an afterthought sitting over in the corner. I know people who had them as demos who would beg him to put them away, right? Couldn't take them home with them. Tesla changed the landscape, which now will change the industry. And it's the same way with the push start. He gave us an aesthetically pleasing vehicle that was reliable, durable, and fun to drive. The Leaf was not fun to drive. Drove it many times. Couldn't stand driving the Leaf. This is an amazing vehicle. If you haven't had one, if you don't want to own one, still test drive one. Come back and tell us what you think. It's the change. So taking a vehicle that has all the attributes that you love in your vehicle and put it in an electric car is what accelerated this industry, because we've already had electric vehicles. So now we're on a path. I think there's no turning back. I'm super excited about this conversation. Can't wait to get into some of the myths and talk about some of the articles that we've written that we can refer people to help educate and really understand what's coming.
Myth with electric vehicles? Come on now. Disinformation? No way. You did a survey recently, and 64% of those respondents said, "I'm worried about losing charge or getting stranded."
Yep.
Now, how legitimate a claim is that?
So I think it's a very legitimate claim, but there's answers to those claims. What we have to make sure we do, and BEV everything, and I know we've titled the show, we need to say it a few times, we're co-founders of that. So we're representing BEV everything. It's a free community. You can find it at BEVEverything.com. It doesn't mean everything's a BEV. It means BEV everything: research, understanding, information, education, tutorials, all the things you want to do just to understand battery electric vehicles, BEV. So we're going to speak to our resources for that.
You do a newsletter also. I think that comes out.
I do. It is weekly. It's on LinkedIn. It's a BEV Everything newsletter on LinkedIn and on Facebook. There's two communities along with the Mighty Networks community. But yeah, so to your point, we've done surveys and we've done a lot of research and we read other surveys, and there's some legitimate concerns out there, and it's up to us, the industry and dealers, to educate the consumer, to make sure they understand how to soften those concerns, maybe even alleviate them, right? Like I've done as an owner. That's not a concern for me. And I travel all over the US in my electric vehicle, but I've learned how to make it not a concern. Ignorance, I guess, or not being educated will make it a large concern. It's not the vehicle's fault. It's not the infrastructure's fault. It's our fault as an industry and as a dealer body and ours as an owner for not understanding what we have and how to maximize it. So yeah, that when we heard these respondents and you had them as part of your opener in the text of the show, it blew our mind, because what it told us was the information out there is incorrect, and the way people feel is not inaccurate. It just needs to be defined and then understood so that, they can have a legitimate opportunity to make a decision with facts. Is it right for everybody? We know that's not the case. Not today. We understand. And look, I own 3 ICE engines and 1 EV. Well, 2 now because I just bought the one in December. But I'm like, my wife won't go EV, right? And I'm okay. I'm not going to force that on her. But at the end of the day, she could. Durran?
No, I love when you bring that point up, because it brings it home to, so it goes back to your question, Paul, how factual is that? Well, it comes down to that person's driving habits. And I love when John makes that statement, is not everybody has to have an EV. And that's the statement I believe in as well, is it's okay to have a gas vehicle at your house and also have an EV. Like, it does not have to be one or the other, but it really comes down to your driving habits and what you plan on using the vehicle for. So a lot of people that I communicate with, they'd use them, outside of John. It's like when I was in California recently visiting a client, the used car manager drives it. And I said, why do you drive a Tesla? I mean, you're a used car manager at a dealership and you drive a Tesla. And he was like, man, you know what he said? He's like, I just enjoy the technology and the experience. He's like, I'm not too far away from the dealership, which is, smart. So he's like, I'm not too far away. It fits the technology and the features that I'm looking for. I remember I asked, I said, what's one thing you can't stand? And I remember he literally, and this is what got me, he could not think of one thing that he did not like. Because what a lot of people, what we'll do is we'll create our world and our universe around what we have. So once you get it, if that was a concern, all of us are intelligent enough to where if we have an EV and range was an example of anxiety that we had, we would just, plan out and make sure that we create a system that's easy, because it's going to be worth the experience that we're going to get in that vehicle. But what we'll find out as we advance and with technologies and whatnot, and as we have the infrastructure, it will be that much easier to enjoy that vehicle if that's an anxiety that you have. But for the people that own them, that's not something that I hear as a common thing.
I will make a caveat, Paul, because we have listeners and we have a lot of people on the call today. It is a different experience for non-Tesla owners. Now, Tesla is opening up their national network to non-Tesla owners, and I think that's a great thing, because the amount of stations available per location, the reliability, the uptime of those stations is, J.D. Power, we talked about this last time, I think, did a study, almost 80% satisfaction rate with Tesla chargers. So Mach-E, the Lightning, the Bolt, all of them at these level 2 charging stations around the U.S., they're still growing that out. So they're, like I said, it was more of the cart before the horse with everyone else. Tesla made sure they had the infrastructure in place, at least in the most populated areas where they would have adoption. So for me, I can go anywhere without less than 5 minutes of deadhead time to a charger and back on the road, with less than 20 minutes of charge time for 80% charge. So listen to what I said. Use the bathroom, get a cup of coffee. Sometimes I get charged because I waited too long to go back to my car and leave. Tesla will charge you 50 cents per minute for every minute you leave the car sitting at the charger after it's been charged to what you said was the maximum. I go 85%. So I had a $25 bill because I ate lunch the other day at a supercharger. That's how fast those things are. At the end of the day, we have no trouble with this because we route map using the dashboard of the Tesla. It stops us everywhere. And one last thing, I wrote this in the article. Tesla's intuitive AI tells you if someone is having construction next to the charger and you can't get into it, or if the charger is down, and they'll reroute you to one that's not down, or even to a level 2. So at the end of the day, it's pretty safe if you know the technology and are organized enough to route map.
Now, I want to get to a couple of comments, and I want to piggyback off of that. Let's see here. LinkedIn user. I wonder who LinkedIn user is today. There are some security issues sometimes that during the show, it shows as LinkedIn user. Then right after the show, it shows the person's name. So whoever you are, LinkedIn user, identify yourself. He says, I am in outside sales. The hint, I think. Richard Mueller, RSC, good evening. I'd like to know, how do you justify EV ownership within your own moral compass, with the DRC being the largest supplier of cobalt?
Dominican Republic, Congo. Yep. So listen, well, let's talk through that because there's so much misconception about what the end game for electrification is.
Yeah.
And let's talk to that. The end game for electrification is to have energy sustainability in the United States. We don't have the resources to do that here. Most other countries don't either. Matter of fact, China does most of the processing, but they don't have the resources either. They have to take those resources from Russia or Ukraine or DCR. We have alliances, and if you've watched the federal government, they're slowly building these NAFTA type relationships with Japan. You probably saw that 3 weeks ago. We signed that agreement with Japan, with the UK, and with Canada, and with New Mexico, to bring more resources from away from those areas into areas of more control and alliance, right? So we can human resource aspect of it, the environmental aspect of mining, all become more aligned with our values. But at the end of the day, if we sit back and do nothing, we're in big trouble. We want those batteries and those minerals in the U.S. And what happens when the batteries and the minerals come into the U.S., and it's the economist to me speaking, but I've talked to the smartest people in the world about this, and they all agree, when we start recycling those batteries here, we become a sustainable, energy independent nation with national sovereignty and protections. If we just sit back and go, we're not playing in that game, we're going to be left behind like we have been already. So we have to make sure that we find the most human friendly resources available today. And we are finding it here, but also build those alliances with Japan and UK and Canada and North America and South America to build our own incubated infrastructure for the future battery electrification. And we are. So it's on the federal government's mind. I was just at a conference talking to the Department of Energy Undersecretary. It's all they think about, and we will get there. But right now, electric vehicles don't represent just the DCR. It's just a misnomer. It's a myth. It's not why we buy it, and it's not a condition of our sacrifice to buy it.
But to that point, right, there are two sides to every equation. One might ask the same question if we look at the health costs as it relates to carbon emissions in this country and others.
That's a great point.
And over many decades in the past. I mean, this is not a political show by any means. I'm all about facts, and I welcome opposing sides because that's what makes us more educated on the whole thing, as long as we're open-minded to listen to it. But there have been studies decades ago, right, before I was even on the swim team, that will say the dangers of the fossil fuels as it relates to carbon emission vehicles, right? So it's a difficult question to answer 100% because there is no 100% right answer on either side. But through open dialogue and conversations like this, we hopefully open enough ears and eyes to be open to what the possibilities are. So
Well, I think the key is we need to keep it as an important KPI in how we build alliances in the future. We understand that mining responsibly and the human resource and ecological side of it is on the tip of the mind of everybody in our country and in our alliances. So trust us, it is tip of mind. I hear it every day.
I love it. Let me get to a couple more comments. That one was a really good one. So
that was a good one. Yeah.
My own train of thought to respond to that immediately. Marcello says that analogy, Henry Ford, Paul, was spot on. Thank you very much. Joe Chambers, my SDL brother. Hey, team. Ray Hernandez, I went to the EV dark side. And Bruce Schreiber, my good friend, he says all it takes is advanced planning. Bruce acquired his first EV about 3 months ago, and he's very, very happy. Had we not already had this show all set up, I would have brought him on. But I'm going to do another one in the not too distant future where I'm going to bring on people like Bruce. So thank you.
Yeah, owners. Yeah.
Marcello says range of anxiety. What range anxiety? Also says, yes, Tesla is opening up their charging stations to non-Tesla vehicles. However, they are only committed up to 30% of their existing chargers. That's a small number, but let's keep this all in perspective. The overall adoption rate is somewhere, 5 or 6% overall?
5.4 where we ended last year. It was actually closer to 7.8 in January. So month over month is picking up. It's they're expecting 10% by the end of the year, which would be a big number for us. So we're excited to see that. A lot of that has to do with affordability. The costs are coming down significantly, as we know. The nickel cost is down significantly, as well as lithium. So a lot of things are helping those manufacturing efficiencies. But yeah, Paul, you're right. I mean, it's very small now. However, the new Tesla networks will be adapted as well. And there are 200,000 new network stations in the U.S. is their goal for 2023. So, hey, 30% of a big number is still a big number.
More than the gas stations that were around in 1908 when the first Model Ts came out.
That's an interesting point.
Yep.
Let's see. Ray Hernandez, hello from Jacksonville, Florida. We purchased a Tesla 2 weeks ago. The biggest issue is using the car for everything. You can't use the cell phone for navigation, etc. If you use the car's navigation, the car will route you to your destination while keeping you close to the charging network. Is that like the parent syndrome? They want to keep you protected? How does that work?
Yeah, so I don't have quite that same experience, but I do know what you're saying. I never used the cell phone for navigation. I always use the onboard dashboard, and you can actually do that in your phone in the app, and it'll transfer it to your car and plan inside the house. It does route you to the network if you are getting so close that you could run out of battery. It'll change your direction to make sure that you don't lose battery, but it's never been a really big problem. So I'm not really familiar with that issue. Maybe that's more of like as the more you use it, the more you'll get adapted to the best way for you. Because I've had to learn a lot of things with our Teslas over the years. Every time a software update, we just had one last night, and my car's making different noises. I had to find out, okay, it just changed sounds for different things, right? They'll do that to you, and I don't know what it means, right? So just keep working with it. And of course, Tesla's got a 1-800 number that's amazing. They'll respond very quickly and answer your phone. You'll be in good shape by calling them and asking them the best practices.
I want to make something relatable to that because I have a Subaru Legacy. It's a gas engine vehicle. I haven't switched over to the dark side yet. I foresee myself doing it at some point. just for me, myself, I'm just not there yet. And that's okay. We all
Certainly.
go at different range, at different speeds. But I use Waze. Okay. I bought a car, it has factory navigation, but I love Waze more. My Apple Play, man, instead of saying state, city, street, number, go, confirm. No, I use Apple Play, navigate to, whatever, using Waze. Boom, just like that. Now, Waze has told me on occasion, get off the highway and take this particular road. I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind. I know this road. Absolutely not. I'm going straight. I think this thing's whacked, right? So I didn't listen to it and I kept going. Well, guess what was around the corner? Massive traffic jam. I got stuck for a half hour. Had I listened to it, I would have gone around it. So I'm thinking that the Tesla network, I made the joke about that parent thing, but maybe that's a similar type of deal, no?
Yeah, certainly. It does do that, right? So it'll change your route based on the most efficient way to get to your destination. Because you have to remember, the vehicle is always thinking about the mileage and time, because it always has to relate it back to the battery, the energy use. So it is intuitively always making those adjustments. It won't change you every 5 minutes, but it's going to find the best route for you. So when you get to your destination, you have the most battery life available, and that you get there, like I said, the quickest way. You can reroute it yourself, but it's probably, like you said, never the best way to circumvent it. Leave it alone. It takes good care of you. I read a blog the other day, a guy who's in that industry deeper than I am, and he said Tesla is designed for you. It's route mapping to never be stranded. To never be stranded. That's its number one goal. And I've not been stranded yet in 8.5 years.
Wow.
I've come close, but I always give myself a buffer, and I've always been okay.
Joe Chambers says, hold on. I'm looking for an extension cord.
That one was funny. I love it. Listen, it's a true story. My son plays college baseball in some of the most remote rural areas. So we'll get there, and I'll bring my level 1 charging apparatus with me. And I'll plug it into the wall. Look, in those back-to-back doubleheaders that are probably 7 hours total from the time I park the car, maybe I'll get 8%, 7%. So what? I mean, I'm getting free energy. So now I went from 22 to 30%. No question I can't get to that next charger than 20% away. But here's another thing I do. I've also got the 240 that plugs into the washing machine. So when a dryer vent. So when I go to my mother's house, she doesn't have an L2 charger. I've got an adapter where she can dry and I can plug, and I just charge my car. It's super easy. And so, yeah, it costs a couple $100. I even have a spare tire in my Tesla. I'm not going to wait for Tesla to come. And I bought the disc. The smart people on here, they're going to go, you shouldn't do that. I bought the discs that go into all 4 quadrants so that you can pick it up by leveraging those discs instead of putting it on the battery. So I've learned how to do it, and I've tested it to make sure I could. So I won't be stranded with charger or flat tire waiting for a Tesla service person. I know how to change a tire. So I think we treat these cars so much differently, to your point, Paul, but there's just another vehicle, right? It's just, you just have to learn to adapt to it.
Yeah. Bruce says Hyundai Ioniq 5, you can use the installed nav or Waze or Google Maps through Apple CarPlay.
I've heard some good things about the Hyundai Ioniq 5. That probably would be my next one. That's an amazing vehicle. Tesla, you can't use anything but their onboard nav, and had to give up Sirius XM.
Are you serious?
Well, I could have used it on my phone and Bluetooth it in, but they don't have the app. So, yeah. So I have to use Apple Music now, or it does have Spotify.
Let's see. Ray Hernandez says, I was driving in Southern California with 20% charge and 100 miles to go. I entered the destination and it routed me using a route that had a charger on the way. Right to your point. Yeah. He says, question, why do you think Tesla has lowered costs so much recently? Is he playing the big volume game now?
Yeah, I had a very important person in our industry. You would know him if I said it, in the automotive ICE side of our industry. say that Tesla is playing chess or we're all playing checkers. They see the future of this business and its volume, right? You've got to get the vehicles on the road. You've got to get the sustainability comes with recycling and renewables, right? So he also understands that Elon watches the economy and he knows the credit crisis is coming. He knows the affordability factor. He knows things that are going to tighten up in the next half of this year to next year. And he doesn't want his vehicles to be a deterrent in that. He'll always have the S's and the Y's that are $100,000+, but he's going to make those cars affordable. Plus, he's got to remember, by nature, he's an entrepreneur. He knows BYD's coming and VinFast and all these others that are building $22,000, buggies, right? They look like a little buggy, but it's an SUV for an entry level. So he wants to make sure that Tesla still has a foothold in that $25,000 to $30,000. So the only other thing I will say this, Paul, because we've heard it, Durran and I consult with dealers all the time. They get so mad. They say, I bought this used Tesla in December and it dropped $8,000 in February. And I'm like, yes, but there's some accountability there that you need to take. Elon said in Q3 that if inflation wasn't curved by Q4, meaning that it started to soften, he was going to discount his vehicles by 10 to 12%. And also, he said in Q1, if some of his vehicles didn't apply for the mandate that came out April 18th that changed the IRA requirements, and it just did on April 18th, he's going to discount them again. So he's done both. He's said it and then done it. So if I'm a dealer in December and I know that because I've researched it, or I work with a team like ours that have educated me, I'm going to go at the trade desk and I'm going to say, I really can't step up like that right now. They're getting ready to drop the prices. We can either take this or you can come back in a month and then we'll negotiate on the new price. Here's the article. Here's what he said. Here's what I think where the industry's going. So use facts, not fiction or opinions, and say, so I can't step up that much. And dealers would have saved a lot of money just by knowing a little bit.
Well, here's another interesting point to that. All right. Yes, it's the calm before the storm. And there are still people that are like this that don't believe it's coming. I know it's coming. I believe it in here and I believe it in here because I've seen the numbers. I've seen what's changing in our business, right? To the 2 points. One, competition factor, smart guy thinking ahead of the curve. I don't know if he may have known this, probably did, because he has more, he has access to more information certainly than we do. But I just heard about an $11,000 Chinese EV 5-door that's going to hit the market. $11,000. Think about that. You can't buy anything for $11,000 today on a new car, can you?
Yeah, I don't know. It scares me a little bit because these are high voltage machines driving around and with people in them, right? 11,000 doesn't sound like there's enough safety technology in that thing. But look, the Chinese, they've got control over their dollar and value, and yeah, they can do whatever they want. I personally wouldn't drive. But the point, you're making a great point. The industry's driving the cost down, period. And he has to play. Look, another post that we've done, you can find all this in the BEV community. We showed the profit margins by vehicle, make, model, trim. So you can have a Model 3 standard range, a Model 3 standard range plus, Model 3 long range, and a Model 3 performance. That's 4 trims in one make model, right? And he's got all of them. And we showed the profit margins, and they're between 5 at the least cheapest car to 12 to 15 on average. So he's got the room to make the move and still be very profitable.
Question. We talk about the value that dropped on the Tesla, but you have point and you have counterpoint, right?
Okay.
Think about the number of cars that have been sold over the last 3 years when the market fully turns. Now, there's still some high-priced cars, but guess what? If you paid $6,000, $8,000, 10, or even more in some cases, and the market returns back to normal, what we refer to as normal, I think $8,000 would be something that I would pray that I was only going to be upside down $8,000, right? So it's all relative. We have to look at all sides of that equation.
Durran and I talk about this a lot too. It's the affordability model, and the fact is, you'll hear this myth a lot too. They're too expensive. They're for the rich and the famous. They're not for the regular folk. We've kind of talked about, no, that's not the case moving forward because they'll be cheaper as we move along. But still, MSRP plus $10,000 is pretty standard. You can't buy a Silverado for under $80,000 these days with anything on it. And most EVs are a lot less than $80,000. And I can tell you, even though the Ford Lightning went up, I think 10 to 15 grand, I think they jumped their price up. It's still well under that number I just gave you. And the other thing is the Equinox GM is signaling it's coming out at 35,000.
Yeah.
And that is a very nice vehicle. So I don't believe, and I think people just think $150,000 Tesla Model S or a Lucid Air or one of these kind of EVs, but they're not thinking about the Bolts or, the lower Model 3s. And the Ford Lightning that came out at 40 grand the first year that it came out, even though it was fleet, it was still under 50,000 for private sale. So those are affordable. And so I think that's a myth we need to make sure people understand. You don't have to rob a bank to own an EV.
And also, what was the date? April 18th or something?
April 18th. So it's a complicated move in the business. Most people don't pay attention to these things because they're thinking about the income requirements and they're thinking about the vehicle itself and how much it costs. Because those are the two really big conditions. How much do you make? How much does the vehicle cost? And that'll determine whether you fit in the brackets. But the other bracket was the materials mandate. And they kind of let that slide the first quarter. They're like, oh, okay, just let's figure everything out. And then by April 18th, we're going to decide how much of this car we want made in America, so to speak. It's not that. It's made in America or NAFTA or other trade related. That's why Japan signed their thing. And that means the minerals that come from the battery. So the earlier question we got about where are the minerals coming from, you're not going to get an incentive if more than a certain percent of your minerals in that battery come from outside these trade alliances or internally domestic to America. So yeah, a lot of vehicles. So, I posted that. I've got it right here. Most of the winners are Ford, GM, and Tesla. So all of the other ones are not winners in this new bracket. So it's on BEVEverything.com. You can go see every make, model, and how it changed from the first quarter to the rest of this year after April 18th. But like I said, the big winners are Ford, GM, and Tesla. The only Tesla model that's not available for the full tax credit is a Model 3 long range.
I think what some of this has spurred also is domestic production, right? There are manufacturers from overseas that are slated to build factories here in 2024, 2025. Some of these factories are going to break ground, and that's going to bring more commerce to us. And I think that's going to step up the adoption rate, because with the Inflation Reduction Act, where there's more monies being routed to this type of technology, I think we're all going to be winners. But there's a lot of disinformation that we have to fight, because that's, I hear people say things and I ask them specifically, well, can you expand on that? And quite often they can't, because they only know the piece that they heard. Let me get to a couple of comments because I don't want to fall behind. Let's see here. Ray here. I'll cut that one. Kenneth Dunner, my friend from Sugarland, Texas. He says, savor the flavor. He always says savor the flavor. I love this guy.
Flavor. I
He's
like that.
probably the nicest person on LinkedIn that has ever existed in the past, exists now, and will for the foreseeable future. This guy's awesome if you're not connected to him. Ray says he has over 12% already on some models. I think what was talking about, the drop in price?
Either drop in price or maybe adoption, by model and by state, adoption numbers vary, right? Like California has high adoption, certain models have higher adoption.
Now, Ed's got an interesting question here. He says, what are your thoughts on hydrogen fuel cell electric and hydrogen ICE for cars? I love that, because from what I know, there's already doing that in the transportation industry as it relates to big rigs, right?
Yep.
Trucks. And I think they're getting double mileage, something like that, of conventional EVs now. Can you speak to that?
A little bit. I did study this. My friend James Carter and Patrick Anderson of the Anderson Consulting Group, they study this a lot more than I do. But my knowledge base in this is pretty broad. And other than Class 8 and, like you said, large fleet vehicle applications. It's just too inefficient for passenger applications for our ultimate goal of carbon neutrality, right? Because you're still having the issues of that with most hydrogen conversions into any kind of energy to drive a vehicle. So thinking about the loss of energy at combustion or conversion, because those are two different ways of converting that energy that he's mentioned right here. Either way, you're losing about 70% to the powertrain from the moment you acquire that energy to converting that energy to either driving it straight to the powertrain or to the battery that drives the powertrain. So a lot of studies have been done. There's two things that getting green hydrogen is not as easy as everybody says, and the other hydrogen is just as bad as burning gasoline. So those two things are a problem. Second is hydrogen fueling stations are not available. You'll see about 4 of them in the West Coast and about 3 of them public fueling stations, right? So like for mom and pop in the SUV, right? Yeah. In New York. They're not in middle America. They're not all over the place like the battery electric stations are. So that's an issue for passenger vehicles. But for onboard large fleet applications, besides Tesla, but Volvo and BYD, they all have huge battery electric vehicles that are in the Class 8 category that are getting 300 to 500 miles. Besides those applications, there's some application for hydrogen fuel cells. Certainly, we don't discount that. We just don't feel that it fits passenger. It's just not efficient. There's not the adoption for the infrastructure.
But remember this, the average person drives less than 250 miles in a week. So the average person once a week goes to the gas station. You have to, because if you don't, you will run out of gas. I don't see cars run out of gas on the road. I saw one van in Dallas. I saw one guy walking with a gas can. I hadn't seen that in years. Poor planning. And I've not seen an EV on the side of the road. So the average person drives less than 250. The average mileage or range is anywhere from 220 to 270, depending on various factors.
Yeah, I think 250 is a good average. Yeah, 250 is a good average. The standard range is 240, and that's one of the lower ones. Very few of them are less than 240.
Durran, what do you drive?
So I actually drive a big boy Ram 1500, right? And the best thing about that, I always tell this story. So John and I, we went to a community event at a dealership in Mississippi, and so I'm following John, and we're driving a little bit, and John decides to accelerate his vehicle a little bit, and I mean it just takes off. And we're going probably like 70, so we're going up past that. And he explains to me why, just talking about, I'd almost have to downshift and punch it to be able to get the torque and the horsepower that he did. But no, I'm really undecided as to which way to go. John and I have talked about it a lot between, there's the EQS, there's a luxury Mercedes that I've enjoyed. I've seen that because I've got clients that have that in the showroom. Then there's Tesla, there's the infrastructure. So really, I've just been looking at everything and test driving them, because that's the same thing in my role. A lot of what I do here and connecting the dots to my clients is really just getting people to just get to experience an EV. John said it best earlier. It's like, if you haven't driven one and you don't like EVs, just drive one. And if you do enjoy EVs and you're considering a new one, drive one. And that's where you get your best experience from them, in my opinion.
So, Paul, I think it's great. This is perfect. I love what Durran said. It's why I wanted to partner with him. He still drives a big ICE engine, but he knows the dealer world. He knows how to market and train and educate, and that's where we start, right? I do a lot of the research for the BEVEverything company, and I try to bring like the newest technology and the latest industry information. And Durran puts it all and packages it all together in these events that we do for these dealers, so that we can help them say, hey, look, you're probably skeptical, and then your people are skeptical. So let's talk through this. Let's get you trained and certified, because look, rising tides lift all boats. And if a dealer gets efficient in EV, their processes get better, their talk tracks get better, their CRM gets better. People want to know about EVs, whether they're going to buy it or not. I mean, you're over here, and people are just flooding through your call today because EVs are on everybody's mind, whether they hate them or love them.
Yes.
What a great DMS filler to say, I'm the EV education center. I'm the community center for you to come get educated. Yeah. We're not going to try to sell you one, but if you want to know anything, come visit. We'll be glad to sit down and tell you how. And boy, our dealers that we partner with are doing just that, and they're becoming transformational leaders in their market.
I want to get to a couple of comments, and I want to piggyback off of that. Ron Archer says, are they making any advancements in putting out battery fires and auto accidents? You know, the funny thing about that, somebody posted about I think a lightning fire that went viral, right? So I decided to look into it a little bit more. And, you know, if you look at the incidences of fires and vehicles, the lowest is still the EV. Lower than
per capita. So I mean, it's a real low number. It's not, oh, you only have a few EVs on the road. That's not fair. No, per EV on the road.
Yeah, it was the lowest. So Ron's comment is a perfect example because he's not the only one that sees that. That's all.
It's scary. Fires are scary, Paul.
Yeah, no joke.
So if you think,
won't dig into. Well, let me look at and see it took me a few minutes to Google it, right? But most people won't do that because most people are too busy. So if 1,000 people see this picture of this lightning on fire and with a bold caption, because that's what was on this particular post, and I offered a counterpoint to it, you know, so that's what you, Durran, me, and the rest of us that want to be open-minded about this are facing every day. Let me just jump to a couple more. Sean Webb, very few people ever see $7,500 in value. Excuse me. Ray Hernandez says, yes. I don't remember what the question was. Ken Dunner says, I'm not the average guy on the road. I drive approximately 350 miles a week in the Houston area. Well, the Uber drivers that I spend time with while at NADA, these are power users that drive them 7 days a week, all day long, and not one of them had any issue regarding charging. So you too, Mr. Dunner, can successfully...
Or longevity. You know, I know quite a few fleet companies that own 50 to 100 EVs, and they lease them to Uber drivers, and they have 300, 500, 700,000 miles on them after a certain amount of years. And most of them have not replaced the battery yet, just in small instances. You know, Tesla came out with a study just the other day that over 200,000 miles in the S and X class, they only lose about 16% of battery life after the 200,000th mile. 16% is not a bad loss of battery, right? So it's amazing what we're finding the durability and longevity of these vehicles are for the battery and electronic powertrain, which is all it is. There's only 20 moving parts in this car versus 2,000 in a regular car. So there's very little to go wrong. And what we think are most scared of as far as our pocketbooks and our experience is seeming to last quite some time. Your example and these Uber drivers that I've met, it's incredible. 700,000 miles on these vehicles. Yes, some of them are replacing the battery, but boy, they've got their money's worth, right?
Yeah. Hey, if a V10 goes on a big truck, how much is that? Is that?
It's been a fortune.
Right? Is that more? So we've got to keep it all in perspective. Regarding the battery degradation, guess what's worse than the 16% or 12%?
Horrible.
Worse. Yet everybody uses this and everybody's always charging. And we never seem to run out of charge. And I firmly believe it's going to be the same thing with the cars.
So while you're looking for the next article, I'll just tell you, as an EV owner, when I first got one, I thought I saw the battery bar and I thought about my cell phone. And it took me a few years to stop thinking that it's that volatile. The EV is not volatile like a cell phone. It's actual and true and lasts. My cell phone battery doesn't. But it's a shift in thinking, right? Because we're so used to thinking we could be at 50 and 20 in 10 minutes. And we're in trouble, right, with this. Right? You can go from 50 to 20. That does not happen in an EV.
Let's see here. Marcello says, the most I drive in one day is 100 to 130 miles, so I will be okay. You need to charge overnight. That's it. Punch and mic drop. LinkedIn user says, hello, Paul. It's Jill here. This may be a question for another show, but how to get collision repair shops on board with preparing for increasing sales of EVs?
It's a great question. Yeah. So we've read, and you guys heard, that GM is the largest non-Tesla repair center for Tesla. It's easily researched. Marion Barry, I mean, it's out of her own mouth. So we know that GM is not afraid to touch a Tesla. So I would say that other dealerships need to come on board and get prepared for what that looks like. Remember, you're not going to touch the electronic powertrain. When it's under warranty, it's going to go back to the OEM. It has to. Warranties are 8 from 10 years. And unless you have high voltage techs out of seat when they're out of warranty, you're not going to touch it. But all the others, brakes, tires, whatever the things that they need, you can do that at a center. Body work. Look, I've talked to the senior vice president of Tesla remarketing. He's like, we don't care who does the body work. You know, if you get in a wreck, it's okay to send it to a regular body center. So
now, to your point about batteries, I lost track how many Teslas I was in, but each one had 70,000 miles or so on them, and not one person in 70,000 miles had spent one penny on replacing their brakes. Yeah. How many people can say that?
It's almost truly one pedal driving. Every once in a while, I've got to touch the brakes, but that is so rare.
Let's see. Jeff Stearns, what about extreme cold?
Love it. This is just like the map. So if you're in the northern climates of the United States, or anywhere for that matter, understand the dealer needs to know this. But if they don't, you'll get this from the manufacturer, right? It's on their websites. You're going to lose between 20 and 30% of your range in extreme cold weather. And does everybody know what that is? Because you got to keep the battery warm. So you're using energy to keep the battery warm, right? You don't want to go start the car cold. There's another example. It has to stay plugged in overnight and preconditioned. Otherwise, you're going to just damage the battery. They're all things you need to know when you're in sub, 30 degree temperature, 20 degrees, sub zero, right? But it's manageable. So I read an article, so I reached out to the guy on LinkedIn. He has a kennel delivery service that he uses his Tesla Model Y in this frigid cold. And he's like in Canada somewhere. He's like, John, I have no trouble. He emailed me back, so I have no trouble. I know my range. I charge it. I precondition it. I understand how to make it warm. And so when I buy a 300-mile Tesla range, I know it's really 240.
Right.
Because the climate's doing that to me. I know it. I plan for it. All good.
Now, point, counterpoint. We talk about, okay, so the car's got to be plugged in, right? That's a best practice.
Especially in cold climates. Yes, sir.
Now, I know plenty of vehicles in the northern climates, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, that unless they have a block heater installed, guess what? Their car's not starting. And that has nothing to do with being an electric vehicle. That has everything to do with being an internal combustion engine vehicle. So we think one thing because of what we know, right? We base our opinions on our own biases, our own histories, and our own knowledge of a particular topic. But when we talk about the cost of battery replacement, nobody's saying how much that V10 is to replace when it throws a rod. When we talk about having the battery plugged in overnight on an EV, nobody's talking about a block heater being an optional item on just about every new car today that's gasoline powered. Because in those climates, you need it, because without it, guess what? Your car's not starting at all.
Very good.
Right? So I love the point counterpoint thing, because it gets at least people thinking a little bit, hey, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I certainly don't. But there's enough that I hear that makes me want to Google shit and learn what it is that I don't know. And I hope that the people watching this tonight and the people that watch it on the replay, I hope this maybe sparks a little bit, See what I did there?
Yes.
You want to look that up. Hold on a second. Marcello said, "Are you an EV salesman?" Oh no,
Yeah.
he wants me to buy him an EV. I don't even have one for myself. Ken, why would I buy you an EV if I don't have one for myself, man? Sean Webb says, cold weather doesn't seem to be a problem in Norway. 85% EV adoption. Whoa.
Love it. That's a big number.
That's huge.
Yeah, I did not know it was that high. Very good.
Yeah, wow. See, there are people out there doing the homework on this stuff. I love it. Ron Usher says techs and body shop techs have to go to school to learn the systems and repair procedures. It's no different than any other new technology, right? Mm-hmm. Before you smack up your Vega on the side of the highway into a pole, they come with the jaws of life and they cut you open, or they cut the car open. You can't do that with an EV, right? You have to be specifically trained on how to evacuate people or extract them from their vehicle. So it's just a different mindset. There's technology. As the technology evolves, we need the T word, training. I know everybody hates that, but that's what it is. You need training to keep up with the technology. And Ray says, if you can afford one and drive it, you will most likely drive it. How much time have you spent in a Tesla, Durran?
Every time I travel, I'm in a Tesla. Like literally any airport. I mean, I just got back from Florida and I'm in a Tesla. So you don't really hear many complaints from people that drive Teslas, and really most EVs in that feedback from what I'm seeing. And what you said here, Paul, what I love, I've got a page full of notes, and I could hear Larry now. Larry Feldman, if he was, when you talked about training, because he would have cut you off and he would, in Larry's voice, he'd be like, now this is talking my language. But speaking both for Larry and Brooke, I could hear both of them talking right now about, this is one of the first shows I've been on where I heard more about the facts on the fuel side, on the ICE side, than we talked about the myths on the EV side. And so all I'm thinking about, like the next time, and I know Larry's probably thinking of this as well when we're training, is like, don't forget about getting your knowledge up on your ICE vehicles, because your knowledge on your ICE really is just as important as your knowledge on your EVs. I mean, when you're talking about how often you're going to change the fuel, how often you're going to be driving, like nothing really changed. Nothing's new under the sun. Nothing's changed. You're still asking your customer the same questions. It's just now you have different options for your customers. You're like, hey, this actually, because that was going to be the notes that I was going to bring to this call, was like, sometimes you might hear ICE people or somebody that's driving gas talking and be like, man, an EV would be great for you. But you might hear some people that talk about really wanting to go an EV, and then you talk to them and you're like, you know what, actually a gas would be better for you. But goes back to what you said, the training and just understanding both sides of it. But I never thought about so many similarities between the fuel side, the gas side, as there is with EVs. So this has been really fun, and I've got a lot of great notes as I intended at the beginning, but really cool.
What I like about this is that, look, it's no secret that 7 in 10 of our customers at the dealership have abandoned servicing with us and gone to the aftermarket, okay? Customers today are educated. The average customer on an EV that comes into the dealership, I would venture to say, knows more than most of the salespeople that they will encounter. Most of those salespeople will try to stir them to an internal combustion engine vehicle because that's what they know. They are afraid to have the conversation because they don't know it, right? The path of least resistance is where water flows. Now, I see this as a welcome opportunity. We're not going to change the future. It's coming, whether or not we are ready for it, whether or not we even want it. It's coming. What it means to the customer is, oh, wow, this is crazy new technology. I can't just trust anybody to go to. I've got to go back to my dealer. So this is an opportunity for you as a dealer to step up your game, to train your people on EV technology, to have those conversations with the customers when they come in. Everybody wants to be guided by an automotive professional that not only cares about them, but understands their needs and understands the technology and can relay it to them in a very simple manner, right? You do that at your store as an EV salesperson or as what I refer to as an EV educator. They will be eating out of the palm of your hand because that's what they want. It's giving the dealers another bite at the service apple that they lost for many, many years. This is our game to lose. Don't think for a second, the aftermarket, that they're not spending money on training to go after that business. It's no secret that there's this many Jiffy Lubes or Express Lubes around strategic areas of the dealerships. It's not a secret, and it's not guesswork. They've planned for this. They're even going after our labor force now. I published a post recently where an aftermarket shop is aggressively pursuing service managers at the dealership, and they're saying specifically, this is perfect for the service manager at a dealership that doesn't feel they get the respect or love that they deserve. Bruce said on the training issue, went to a Hyundai dealer and the service advisor did not know how to open the charging port door. That's what I'm talking about. This is our game to lose.
So I'm going to one-up you on that. We, in our lifetime, us three here, because we're close to the same age, this is our last opportunity to fundamentally transform automotive retail. And it's not just going to take EV, but EV is the catalyst. AI and EV together is going to completely change the automotive retail space in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to start with EV. So if you're sitting back going, I don't know, I'm wait on this EV thing, like some people said, I'm going to wait on this internet thing. Not only are you going to be behind the 8 ball, but when AI hits it and the data integration and the logic and the behavior and the machine learning ties into all the technology on the vehicle and the OEM have, if you're not in the middle of it, you're going to be looked at like you got 3 heads as a dealer. As an automotive dealer, you have the chance to shape this industry with your OEM. And I'm convinced of that. We hear all these things about OEMs trying to find different avenues for retail distribution. You just said it, Paul. They can't do it. There's too much technology in these vehicles. There are too many unknowns. They're scary. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're just scary because the technology is overwhelming. So the general population is not going to buy one without sitting in one, talking to someone, listening to someone, feeling it, smelling it, and then sitting down and getting some assurances before they drive it off the lot. That's going to be probably 60% of the population. If they go to a dealership and you don't know as much as they know, and they've been Googling it for 3 months before they visited, you're gone. And let's just say you get trained, and that's what we do. BEVEverything, we come in and we train, certify, you're ready to go. But then let's just say you don't go and execute on that training. Keep advancing yourself, keep teaching, learn the talk tracks, buy a few EVs, take a few in on trade, service a few of them, train your sales tech. When the time comes, when the OEM's looking for answers, they're not going to look at you. They're going to look at the other dealer groups that are doing it well and go, come sit down at the boardroom with us. Yeah. Tell us what we're doing, because we're still lost. I promise you, I can tell you right now, we talked to them. Durran knows them well as well. They're confused. They're misunderstood. They don't know what the future looks like as it pertains to the entire landscape. So making assumptions that you're out of the game or you're in the game is not a correct assumption. You want to create the game. You're not out or you're not in. You're involved in the game, and the game will always be yours. And look, if you do that, the future is going to be amazing for automotive retail. But I'm afraid to say those that are going to sit back and wait, they're going to have a hard time catching up.
And, they're still going to need service. They're still going to have recalls. As a matter of fact, EVs, I think, had a higher incidence of recalls than other vehicles. And guess where they have to go for recalls? Back to the dealer.
Yep.
They're going to need more tires. They may need less other service, but they're going to need more tires.
And dealers can get involved in the subscription process with AI, I promise. They just have, look, who knows what the future looks like, but I can tell you that the dealers that are engaged today, engaging their OEMs, engaging their reps, engaging their customers, engaging the process, advancing, are the ones that are going to teach the OEMs how to manage the subscription process. So guess what? They're not circumvented. They're actually involved. And so they're going to get part of that revenue. It's going to be another area of opportunity for them. They need to go. We get excited because we see it, but dealers are running these multi-million-dollar operations, and we understand it. They're busy in the economy and the age of inventory, and we understand that interest rates and consumer confidence, dealer confidence, we study all that too. But we also want to be there to say, hey, don't forget, here's a window that's cracking open. Let's get your foot in there as well. And that's what we're trying to do, making sure that you do what you have to do to be successful today. We're going to help you and support you, but we also want to make sure you're successful tomorrow.
Listen, the dealer wanting to run the OEM wanting to run the show is not anything new, right? They've tried it in the past. They found they can't do it. And honestly, maybe I'm off base, but I think some of the pricing and the disgruntled customers over the last 2 or 3 years, maybe that pissed off some customers, and the OEMs can't afford to lose customers. Maybe that's directed some of this talk about, hey, we're taking back this EV business. Who knows? But
well, I can tell you that one of the things that the dealers give the OEMs, if they'll just think about it this way, is an incredible infrastructure of geography and location and access that they can't build out on their own. So for a charging network infrastructure, it doesn't need to be a push. It needs to be a pull. Dealers need to pull OEMs along. I'm not doing this. You're forcing me to pay $1,500 per station or $3,000 per station. Monetize the station and do it on your own if they won't let you monetize it. Or if they will let you monetize it, go all in. Have it available for the public to come charge. And when they come in to charge, get a cup of coffee and put them in the DMS. To show them another ICE engine, show them another EV you have on the lot, learn from them, their experiences, and what an amazing transformation that'll happen in your dealership if you wrap your arms around this. What I wouldn't do, and look, I'm not advising dealers on the show today. We take it by dealership, but I wouldn't go and buy more landscape. We're not sure if it's more inventory is the future. But what I would do is invest in what I have today to make it more high tech with infrastructure and education and training. If you do that in your current scenario and put some EVs out front, show them charging while people drive on the road, have 3 or 4 open for people like me that want to come get mine charged. And let's say I'm driving my Tesla and you've got the new Equinox. I may go, hey, you want this Tesla? I want that Equinox, right? Or the new Lightning, right? Or whatever. There's so many opportunities there. We got to stop fighting the OEMs. We got to start thinking, how can I take advantage of this for me as a dealer and win? And we can help you do that. Thank you.
Brilliant. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to being in a store, and I've heard them say the words as you're transferring the stuff from the old car to the new one. I had no idea I was buying a car today. Right? You've all heard it. So
I've been a victim of that. Yeah, I love it.
Proactively take the market, become the leader in your space, and people will talk and people will come to you from everywhere. We are also in the yarn business, right? Crazy. What do you do? We're in automotive, we're in marketing, and yarn. That fit it. Well, it really doesn't, but look, we're retailers. But the bottom line is, in the last couple of weeks, we shipped to Chile, Denmark, and Germany.
Wow.
Okay. They found us just like they can find your dealership. If you become the place that's the expert with EVs, and you do what that picture you just painted, John, freaking Rembrandt of EVs, man, because that's what they need to do.
Yeah, I love it.
Wow.
And I tell you, Durran is the master at marketing yourself as a salesperson, your dealership, your culture. That's what he does for our dealers. I mean, he teaches them how to show the world that I'm the transformational leader in this space and I want to help you. It's really good.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, John. And thank you as well, Paul. And again, it's all about knowledge. And what I've learned with John and on episodes like this is you're also, I don't like to use the word future proof, because I feel like that's being overutilized, because I don't know if you can really future proof your store, because we don't know the future, but you can definitely stay ready, and I think that's a lot of what we're talking about here. Just stay ready, stay prepared, because nobody on here wants to be that person, or you don't want to be that dealership that's like, dang, I wish I would have, because what could you lose by staying ready in this space and being prepared for it? Nothing. All you're getting is extra knowledge that you'll be able to use and learn no matter which way the industry shifts. So really cool. And I love the insights that we shared here. And I think this will help a lot of people, because I know it helped me as well.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you. John, do you have any final words for us?
Hey, look, I just want to let everyone know that whether you're a dealer, and we talked some about that, whether you're a consumer who owns a vehicle today and you want to share some experiences, or whether you just don't know, you're like, look, I've heard a lot about this, but I'm not sure. Go to BEVEverything.com. You can join our community right there. And in that community use the search bar, type any question you want to ask: price, range, cost, incentives, anything you want to ask. And that'll pop up with some information and articles for you to do your own homework and research, and reach out if you want to ask us questions. We're always here. The community's free, by the way. So just go join and dig in and tell us what you think.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your Sunday night with us. Stay on after we go off here for a couple minutes. To those that watched and attended today, great questions. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate your support every week with the show. And to those watching on the replay, I appreciate you as well. With that, I wish you a safe and successful next week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks for watching, gentlemen. Stay on just a moment here. See you next week.